Hello, how you doing? Uh, so I'm going to talk to you about how I go around finding my way around the fretboard. This is one of those crazy things. If you look it up on YouTube or you go and search for it, you'll have 50 different people telling you 50 different ways to visualize the notes and visualize the fretboard. Nothing wrong with any of them. What I tend to find is that I use a combination of things to figure out where I am, and I have done over the years. Learn things from different people see things in a different way. And what I'd suggest is that after you've done a few different things, you'll start to see patterns there yourself, or ways that you'll understand or you'll remember rather, kind of where notes are. So this isn't something to stress over. It's just something you keep on working on every now and then, and it will become useful because you'll know instantly how to get to a note, or at least find a note, or know what note is, where you're playing. All right, so I'm going to show you a few things. So the first thing is, of course, you'll know that there's 12 notes. So going from an open E, for example, to the octave of the 12th fret, you'll have played all 12 notes. So there's actually not an awful lot of notes to remember, but as you know, there are an awful lot of sharps and flats to remember, right? So trying to remember all the flats and the sharps are, as well as all the natural notes, the notes which don't have sharps or flats, it's a fair bit to get started with. So the way I approached this when I was learning was, first I try to identify all the natural notes, and the natural notes obviously being notes which aren't sharp or don't have any sharps or flats. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I wrote these down on a fretboard diagram, so I've got a diagram here I'll show you in a second, and I tried to find little patterns in them. And I found something. So one of the patterns that I found really early on was just a phrase that just stuck in my head, and I had no idea why, and it's just FGAB, E-F-G-A-B, right? So if I got my little fretboard diagram out like this, and we wrote let's just start on the low E string, so I've written the fret numbers under there, and if we start on the low E string, and I write E, F, G is over here, A is over there, and B is over there. To me, in my silly little brain, it spells out the word F, Gab, EF, GAB. And if I think of EF as a pair, because they're always together, F, EF, then every one of those notes has a gap between them. Think of EF as one pair together. So there's EF, gap, G, gap, A, gap, B, gap. Now, if you take a look at that in the low E string, quite easy to remember because it's an E to start with, F straight after it, and then Gab, G-A-B, just falls on the dots, right? So dots 3, 5, and 7, position 3, 5, and 7 on the fretboard. And of course, exactly the same on the high E string. Okay, now if you go and work out where the rest of the E, F, G, A, B's are, funnily enough, here's one I kind of started to prepare earlier, but I didn't put in the GABs. You'd end up with a big diagram like this, which just shows you where all the EFGABs are. So if I started on this one, for example, and we start working on the same thing, I could do EF. I know there's a G, A, and B here on the 3rd, 5th, and 7th frets of both E strings. I won't do it on the high one. If I then go to the D string, I've got an E and an F, and then I'm going to have a gap, a G, A, B, exactly the same. And I can do this for every single, I can do this for every single place where I've got EF. I can have a space, then G, then a space, then A, then a space, then B. So that's something you could remember. If you visualize this across the low E and the high E, and even on the D string, you've got three strings covered where you know E, F, G, A, B. And with those, you can obviously then find F sharp, G sharp, A flat, A sharp, B flat, C, which is right after a B, which will appear over here, a D, which you know is going to be just 2 frets on from the C. So it gives you a starting point where you can start to find notes. All right, so that's the first thing I did. The second thing I did when I started looking at this was thinking, well, I don't actually need to know where all the E, F, G, A, B's are, because I can work out G, A, B quite easily, F, G, A, B, if I know where the E's are. So all right, let's do that instead. Let's forget about all the other notes and let's just think about where the E's are. And we could write this down like this as well, right? So let me just get rid of some of these over here. And we end up with this. And again, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, all right, so what's the relationship between the different E's on this diagram? And there's a way, we'll have done this, if we're doing lessons, we'll have done this, and to say, if you're on a given note, so let's say, for example, we're on the E at the 12th fret. So if I come up here, I'm on E on the 12th fret. To find the next E from here, going that way, I move forward by 2 frets, and I jump over a string, and I'll find it here. Okay, it's the 14th fret of the D. To find the next E going that way, I've got to again go forward by two frets and jump over. However, because I'm ending up on the B string, or if I'm going to end up crossing over the B string from another note, But because the B string's involved, you've got this thing where you have to move forward by 1 fret just because of the way the B string is tuned. So in this instance, I've got to go forward 1, 2, 3 frets and then jump over a string. And there's an E over there. So I found a way that if I've got an E on any string, if I want to head in this direction, I know I can just jump forward by 2 frets, jump over a string, and you end up at an E. And this holds true for any note. So if I was, for example, on a G, and I wanted to find the next G from here, same thing, 2 frets forward, hop over a string, and your G's there. Okay, so you've got the G on the 3rd fret of the E string, the G on the 5th fret of the D. If I want to find my next G going this way, same thing, go forward by 2 frets, jump over a string. However, I'm on the B string, so I've got to go forward by 1 fret because of the way the B string's tuned, so I end up with 1 there. Okay, and so it follows all the way along. It's slightly different when you're coming back this way. So when you're coming back this way, if I show you my diagram again, if I wanted to go, for example, and I wanted to find, I'm over here, whoops, let's get that back on. Let's say I'm over here, and I want to find the next E in this direction, or the next E, the next octave of that. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to go forward by 2 frets, and I'm going to jump over 2 strings, and that's going to take me to the E that's on the coming backwards on the fretboard, so heading towards the low end of the fretboard. So for example, in that particular one, I'm on the 5th fret. Yep, 5th fret of the B string. To find the next E, I'm going to go forward by 2 frets, 1, 2, and then I'm going to hop over 2 strings, 1, 2, and my next E is going to be here, which is 7th fret of the A string. Okay, so you've got this kind of a method of finding root notes. So with this, what you do then is you sit down and you pick a note at random. Let's say it's E for now because of this whole F-gab thing, and try to find all the E's. So you know you're going to have 2 open E's, which are there. And then using this approach, you're going to have an E, 2nd fret of the D string, 5th fret of the B string, 7th fret of the A, 9th fret of the G, 12th fret, 12th fret, 14th fret of the D, 17th fret of the B. What we get up to there? 19th fret of the A, and then 21st fret of the G. And there's all your E's. So if you can find all your E's quickly, you know how to find the F's, you know how to find the gab, and you got E, F, G, A, B. So this is a really useful little exercise. Pick a note and just work out the octaves, going all the way along the fretboard. Work out every note rather, every version, every copy of that note, every occurrence of that note. That's the word I was thinking of. Every occurrence of that note. Going this way along the fretboard, using that little technique of jump forward by 2 frets, hop over a string. Don't forget the B string. When that's involved, you've got to go forward an extra fret. And when you're coming back, go forward by 2 frets, jump over 2 strings backwards, and you land on that note again. This is really good. Once you start doing this, what you can do rather, is if you get yourself a little diagram like this, you can start to see little shapes which you'll start to recognize and just get used to. So you'll know that there's, for example, this thing going on. Okay, if I get rid of this crazy line over here, you'll see there's a shape like this going on between notes. And once you start to draw this out and you start to look at it and start to visualize it on the fretboard, play it as well, obviously, you'll start to see these shapes yourself. So it's a silly thing. For example, I can see this here, and that's a shape which I can always see in terms of if I've got a note on the B string and I'm trying to find the 2 roots, the same 2 notes going this way, I know there's that shape. Okay, so play around with that, identify your root notes, know where your E's, F's, G, A, B's are, and you've got a great bunch of notes there that you can use then to try to find your way around the fretboard. All right, so that's one thing. What's next? The other thing which you can do is using a scale. Most guitar players, when they're learning about scales, we learn a major scale. You learn pentatonics as well, but major scale is really important. And one of the first major scales you learn is the C major scale. And there's a good reason for that. The good reason for the C major scale, being one of the earliest ones to learn, is there's no sharps or flats in it. The notes just go C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So if you can find a C and you know how to play a C major scale in a few different places, so let's say, for example, over here, let's get rid of this thing. Let's see over here, the 3rd fret of the A string, starting there. Simple C major scale. But knowing there's no sharps or flats, you can do C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So you know where the notes are. There's nothing to think about there that's complicated. And you can carry on everywhere you know a shape to be able to play the C major scale. So C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And so on and so on. Everywhere you know that shape, and there's a bunch of them. There's four that I use, but there's a whole bunch of them. You can quickly get to any one of those notes: C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So you've got your natural notes there. And because of that, you can then find all the enharmonics, the notes in between, the sharps and the flats quite easily, just by knowing that major scale and knowing how to play it in a few different places. So there's two things we've got now. We've got the F-gab thing. We've got octaves that we know how to find because of this little trick that we have. And if you know a scale, like the C major scale, which has got no sharps or flats, and you know it in a few different positions, that's something you can use to work out notes really quickly, no matter where you are on the fretboard. And the more you start doing this, the more you'll quickly just start seeing where the notes are. It's not something which happens overnight, but you've got to practice it, right? Like anything, you practice it, and sooner or later, I promise you're going to look down, you're going to go, I know what that note is. Or you'll be able to find it quick enough, and that's the important thing. The final thing then is if you land on a note, let me just get my guitar out of the way here. If you land on a given note and you quickly want to work out what the note is next to it or behind it, is there a way to do that? And this is something which somebody showed me years ago, and I kind of forgot about it and was reminded about it not too many years back. And it's this really crazy little mnemonic. Let me show this to you. All right, so if we go back to our little diagram here, right? So we've got this thing going on here. And we will start to write notes out on here, okay? So I'm going to let's just get rid of a couple of these notes. I'm going to get rid, in fact, let's get rid of all of these. Let's get rid of all of these notes. And if I just write down the open strings, so E, A, D, G, B, and E. And let's write down a couple of the F gabs. Let's do it on the low E string rather. So let's do F, G, oh, let me actually write it on the string, otherwise I get confused as well. F, G, A, and B. Now, how do you remember? How would you figure out? And let's just to make sure we're not going to do anything crazy here. Let's do this. Let's put a C over there because I know there's a C over there, and this is going to kind of show it, right? And I know there's also a D over here. So how would you know if I'm on that C what the next note's going to be going this way, or how if I'm on the F what the next note's going to be that way? Or similarly, if I'm on a note and I want to, let's say for example, I didn't know this was an A over here, and I know that I'm on a D on the 5th fret on the A string, how would I know what that note over there is going to be? I'll show you something which I thought was pretty cool. And for this, there's this ridiculous kind of image that I've got in my mind of how to memorize it. My friend told me something entirely different, but this is for some reason how I remember it. So the A-Team, remember the A-Team? For those of you who are too young to remember, you need to go and look up the A-Team, one of the coolest 80s programs ever. It was ridiculous. However, had some cool characters in it. So it had this guy called Mr. T, B.A. Baracus, played by a guy called Mr. T. Very, very funny. And a guy called Murdoch. So imagine this story, right? Murdoch was this slightly unhinged fellow, but he was really clever. And let's imagine he wins the lottery, all right? He goes to, he's a guitar player, and he decides he wants to go buy a guitar. So he's got this like 160 million quid or something ridiculous. And he goes to the guitar shop, and he's got everybody in the A-Team with him, and they're all excited thinking, we're going to get a guitar too. Guitar shop's full of people, about 20, 30 people. They see him coming in, they applaud him because they know he just won 160 million quid on the Euro Millions or whatever. They all think they're going to get a guitar as well. So Murdoch goes to the most expensive guitar he can find, picks it up, pays for it, and walks out. And everyone's stunned. And Mr. T turns around and he says, buy everyone a damn guitar, you cheap fool. All right? Buy everyone a damn guitar, you cheap fool. So this is how I remember this. It's I said cheap fool, crazy fool. Look up the A-Team. He called him a crazy fool all the time. Buy everyone a damn guitar, you crazy fool. So here's what we're doing here, right? You've got to write down the notes from this. So buy everyone a damn guitar. We'll leave out Y because there's no such letter, but you're cheap. Crazy, you're crazy fool. All right. And let me just get my head out of the way on this thing. Oops. So we can. There we go. All right. So remember that mnemonic. Buy everyone a damn guitar, you crazy fool. You can use that now to figure out where the notes are. And what you do is whichever note you're on, this only works for the whole notes, by the way, so no sharps or flats, but this will find you all the whole notes no matter where you are. So whichever note you're on, let's say, for example, we're on C. So we've got a C here, which is on our 3rd fret of the A string. if I want to find out what the next note's going to be on the same fret, next string over, you basically find your C in our little mnemonic over here, and you see what the next note is, F. That's the next note. So what I would do is I would write that down here, and there's my F. Simple, right? There are a few rules, however. This works pretty much everywhere exactly like that. So I'll show you another place. Let's say, for example, we're going to do, let's do this with the B. All right, so we're going to do this now with this B over here. And in our little mnemonic, the next letter on from B is an E. So that's telling me that the next string on from there, same fret, the note's going to be an E. The next one over, again, you just follow that along. The next one over then is going to be an A. Nope. Okay, so that one over there is going to be the one which is after an E. So that's telling me there's going to be an A over here. And you keep following it. The next one's going to be a D. Now, there are a couple of rules here that we've got to observe for this to work. And these two rules. Rule number one is when you land on the B string, oh, hang on a second. Hello, camera. There we go. All right. Sorry, notice my camera had fuzzed out there. When you land on the B string, you have to move forward a fret. All right, you've got to move forward by one fret. That's a rule. The second rule is if you end up writing the letter B down as part of the sequence, you've also got to move forward by one fret. And if you happen to land on the B string and the note that you're going to write down as a B, they both apply and you've got to jump forward by 2 frets. All right, so let's just carry this on. Let's start this from the F. Let's go all the way back to this first fret on the E string. So F, okay, so the next note here, you can see, if I take a look, there's my F over there. So the next note's going to be a B because basically you go back to the start of the sequence over here again. But because I'm writing a B down, the rule is I've got to move forward by a fret. So I would write my B over here. And then I carry on my sequence. By everyone A, the next note I'm going to write down is going to be on the B string. And the rule is I've got to move forward by a fret. So move forward by a fret. D. By everyone a damn. The next note's a G, obviously. The G is the same on both E strings, so I'll write down my G there, and there you go, crazy fool. Okay, so now I'm up to here. So my next note now is going to be a B again, because it's a B, I move forward by a fret, and I write it down here. Next note's going to be an E, but because it's going to be on the B string, I've got to jump forward a fret, and I write it down over there. Okay, A, D, G, and you got right down a C over here. And so you go on, and you can write this all the way along the fretboard, and it works. Okay, so the two rules, let me just get my head out the way here again. I'll put it over Mr. T for a second. Sorry, Mr. T. And the two rules are, number one, when you write B, need to jump forward one fret. Excuse my terrible writing. And number two, when you land on B string, also jump forward one fret. That's it. Okay. You're going to write down a B, you've got to move forward a fret. You're going to land on the B string, also got to jump forward a fret. If you happen to be landing on the B string and the note you're going to write down is a B, you've got to jump forward 2 frets. They both apply. And this will work all across the fretboard. So the cool thing about this then is if you know where some of your notes are, if you know F gab, if you know where your E's are, you can find the octave of any particular note you're trying to find. You know where your major scale, your C major scale notes are. You can take a look at the fretboard and instantly know what the next notes are going to be surrounding where you are, and then work out notes around those. And remember, this is just natural notes, but you can work out the sharps and flats easily from here. Okay, so there's a few approaches to figuring out notes on the fretboard. There's all kinds of other stuff you can do. There's things you can do, like you pick a note, like you maybe do one note a day, an E one day, an A the next day, and just quickly try to find them all on the fretboard. And the more you do that as well, you'll see that shape is constant, the shape that we kind of worked out of how to work out the octaves of notes, of the root notes that you're trying to find. Next day you'll do it with B, next day you'll do it with C, D, etc., and then mix them up. And that's also a really, really good kind of thing to be able to do. So a long-termer, very useful though. Comes in very handy for all kinds of things, working out chords and working out notes that you can play. It gets even more useful when we start thinking about intervals as well, but that's one for another day. So I hope that was useful. See you later. Bye.